Hello and welcome to Truth Be Known, stories about how modern data leaders seek truth in an uncertain world. Today's episode features an interview with Asha Saxena, founder and CEO of Women Leaders in Data and AI. Asha has 25 years of experience building successful tech businesses. She also serves as a CEO coach working with women in tech, and she's an adjunct professor at Columbia University, teaching enterprise strategy and data strategy. In this episode, Asha talks about how empowering women in tech means including male allies, investing in a simple user experience for improved adoption rates, and how to earn trust in data. But before we get into it, here's a brief word from our sponsor.
Truth Be Known is brought to you by Talend, a leader in data integration and data governance. Talend enables data and analytics leaders to deliver healthy data across their organization to drive business outcomes. Talend Data Fabric is the only platform that seamlessly combines a suite of data integration and governance capabilities to ensure data is complete, clean, uncompromised, and readily available. Learn more at talend.com. TALEND.com.
And now, please enjoy the conversation between Asha Saxena, founder and CEO of Women Leaders in Data and AI, and your host, Rob Milner.
Welcome to Truth Be Known. I'm Rob, and today I'm joined by Asha Saxena. She is the founder and CEO of Women Leaders in Data and AI. Asha, it's so great to have you on the show.
I'm excited to be here.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining. Can you just introduce yourself and tell us a bit about the multiple roles that you have?
Absolutely. I started my career as a computer programmer. My undergrad and grad is in computer science engineering. And traditionally, after you graduate in computer science, you become a programmer. But I took that path to really become an entrepreneur. I started my first company in data management consulting services, and then went on building a couple more in e-commerce and healthcare software. And now I'm a professor at Columbia University where I teach entrepreneurship, and I also teach strategy and consulting. I'm also a CEO coach, so I coach about 10 to 12 CEOs on building high-growth companies. And during the pandemic, I actually started Women Leaders in Data and AI, which is truly a mission-based organization for focusing on bringing women leaders in the same playing field to build our digital world or digital economy or digital presence, which is so critical now.
That's a fascinating career path. Can you tell me a little bit more about what led you to create Women Leaders in Data and AI?
If you think about my career path, starting from being a programmer and building companies, really building a mission-based company was not on my plan, really, career plan. During the pandemic, I think a lot of people got a chance to reflect on their life, their careers, and how they want to take their professional life moving forward. And I think it was such a good time because we all were at home, close to our family and close to our work at the same time, like never before. And being an entrepreneur, I've built companies and I've built teams, but never really reflected on myself. And my son asked me a question and he said, "Mom, you seem to be doing these multiple things. Where do you get happy the most? Where do you really, truly get the satisfaction?" And I didn't really have an answer. And he said, "Why don't you do something or build something for people like you?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Women in tech or women in data. What you're working, what your real work is. Have you done anything for that?" And I thought about that. And first I got offended and I was like, "What do you mean, women? Are you putting me in a box? I'm a professional, don't put me, all my life I worked really hard for my worth. And I don't think my worth should be just boxed by my gender." And he's like, "No, Mom, it's not about boxing you. It's more owning it. You could own that you're a woman in tech and there are not too many women, and women probably have challenges because they don't have enough role models, on the top." And so it kind of made me think about it. And then I was speaking at an event, and one of my slides had the stat about, how the world is moving into the digital phase. And all our life is run by algorithm now, from how we shop to how we get in a cab or how we choose a movie we're going to watch is based on an algorithm. And only 12% of women are coding this algorithm. I mean, there's probably over 12% who are also engaged, but the women who are coding are only 12%. And when I was reading that stat, it really made me think about what my son was talking about. I was like, oh my God, we are living in the world that was designed by men. And now we're building this new world, digital world. And only 12% of women are coding. And then as you think about AI, it's about the data set you have and how the machine learns from the data set that's been provided to the machine. And then an example which I give during my talks is, the chatbot Microsoft created, Tay, on Twitter. And she was launched, and she was a 19-year-old chatbot. It was a conversational AI. In 2016, when she was launched, within 16 hours, she became racist. Now, during those time, if you remember, Trump had just come in power, and there was a lot of conversation about Mexican, and so she just really became super rude and racist in her comments, because what she was doing was, it was an algorithm. She was picking up conversations and providing the feedback. And if you hear, algorithms in HR or recruiting, where you must have heard about the financial services companies who, did this experiment, and the algorithm for the high positions of the C-level positions rejected women resumes because the data didn't show that there were enough women could succeed in that position because there was no women hired in the past. So the question is that we don't have enough data, we don't have the diverse data, and we don't have women on the top who can help create that change. So what do you do about that? So when I launched the organization, my thought was there's enough work going on, at least there's some work going on in creating the pipeline, but there's not a lot of work going on with the leaders who are already on the top. So you feel that, okay, these women got on the top, leave them alone. Let's go back and try to build our, girls in high schools and middle schools and colleges to get the women in the pipeline right. But what happens to the women who are on the top and don't have role models? What happens to the women who are VP level or C level who don't have enough peer group? And what happens to the environment? Is the environment ready? I tell you, within our organization, I see so many women who are leaving their organization because they get on the top and they realize that the top is not ready for them. So retention is a problem now. And so my effort truly was to build strong female leaders in technology so that the retention problem is solved for organization, because they feel they have a place to come. So they get to come in WILDA, I call it Women Leaders in Data and AI. They come to WILDA and they have a peer network where they can share experiences and have a place to be able to learn from each other's experiences, and be a stronger leader because they're not alone anymore.
And what kind of feedback and response have you been getting since you've created that network?
In 2020, it was really, I think it was about 10 of us who got started. And in January 2021, we launched it as a formal organization. And by end of 2021, we are 122 members. It grew very, very fast. And the members who grew, we already have had, when I tell you that the first 6 months, 7 months, when we were talking to the women, they were not sure if they could get the C-level position, should they apply, or if they are in C-level position, the engagement within the organization. We've had several women who've climbed the ladder, the VP level. So we have, 2 level, we have C-level and a VP level. The VP level, few of them have moved on to C-level already because of the confidence they got within the group. And the C-level are getting more secure because they have a network now. So we've gotten really good response. And we have a wait list of 3,000 members right now, which we have to screen. So we are pretty busy
And what kind of effect do you think that has by bringing those leaders, women leaders in data together? What kind of effect do you think that has?
First of all, I feel like in any organization, if you're in marketing, finance, operations, supply chain, sales, you're touching data. So, you have to be a data organization. You cannot be not a data organization. You can't afford to be not a data organization. So, the impact, I think, is that if you are a data organization, you realize the value of having the diversity in the data set. You need to have diversity in your teams. And if you have leaders who are diverse leaders, now you have the diversity in the leadership skills that can bring and build an organization which is ready for serving your consumer, your customers, because your customers are diverse. So instead of having everyone look alike on the leadership team, having diversity and having women leaders who are in data, AI, or technology security helps you solve problems you cannot solve otherwise because there is a different viewpoint of solving these problems. And I tell you that I have to say that there are organizations like L'Oreal, Deloitte, Chevron who've really stepped up and said, we care about our women leaders and they are our corporate members. And they're doing a lot to make sure that their C-suite and their next, senior leaders are getting the attention. So there is a job satisfaction, and they can continue on this journey to building the pipeline for senior leaders.
That's fascinating because you're drawing that connective tissue across that diversity needs to be at every single level, that not only just at the leadership level and throughout a company, but there needs to be diversity in the data set because the customers that are being served are just as diverse. You touched on an earlier challenge, which is around diversity in the workforce, and particularly around data and coding. And coding the algorithms is predominantly done by a male workforce. But you've centered your focus around helping women at the senior leadership level. Do you see yourself returning that problem I just stated before with the help perhaps of those members within the leadership circle, the leadership group that you've created? How do you see that?
Well, the first step was to make sure that the senior leaders who are there are secure, because we want to make sure that, as we're building the pipeline and they get to a certain level, they can't climb the ladder. So that's the first challenge. And the very few who climb the ladder get stuck right on the top. So want to make sure that the people who are on the top don't feel stuck or don't feel lost. So they're taken care. Once they're taken care, so what we've done this year, the first year, we started with just adding female leaders because it was a women leaders group. But about June, July, we realized that the mission cannot be solved without having men involved. So we added male allies to the group because it's not just a women's mission. It should be it's men care about it too. Men want a digital world which is fair and clear for our future generation. Even though the name of the organization is called Women Leaders in Data and AI, we have 70% of our members are female leaders, senior leaders, and 30% of our members are male allies. So, and there's wonderful male leaders like Michael Kingston, who's the CIO of L'Oreal. We have Seth Dorbin, who's the global chief AI officer at IBM, who are great spokespeople for this cause, and they are our members. And so we started with just female members, added male allies with the cause of building senior leaders. We also have a Wilda Academy, which brings in, and we already have 4 events which we run, where we bring in the senior leaders and we bring in the aspiring leaders together. So the senior leaders are C-level, VP level, and the aspiring leaders are, could be anywhere between less than 7 years of experience, who are, maybe analysts, programmers, are climbing the ladder, managers, senior managers who are climbing the ladder to get to the position where they get into the senior leadership roles in the organization. So we do try to make a match 4 times a year where we have events to bring them together, where there is experience sharing, mentoring, and conversation, open conversation about the challenges the aspiring leaders are facing, and kind of lesson learned and for mutual benefit.
It's fantastic because that really allows both peer-to-peer conversations to occur and that benefit there, but also sort of sending the elevator back down and working towards mentoring people who are earlier on in their career path.
Another thing I would mention is that, a lot of times you think that the senior leaders can share experiences to help the aspiring leaders to come up on the ladder. But also remember that once the aspiring leaders share their experiences, the senior leaders learn things which they might not know. So it's really educational both ways to learn and grow for each individual who's participating.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so there's a lot of great work that's happening in women leaders in data and AI. It's a fantastic mission. Let's switch into our next segment and talk about cracking the code. The data-driven nature of companies today. And, I talk with a lot of organizations, and it's kind of scary what happens behind the curtains. I think all organizations, they're surrounded by data, but we did a recent survey and 36% of those leaders still are making decisions without data. So why do you think leaders are struggling with that?
Change is so hard, right? Change is so hard. Once you're so used to doing things a certain way, you always want to do the things the same way. And I'll give you a very simple example. If you think about your mom cooking, she's never looking at a menu or what portions she should put. And I have to tell you that my trainer would come and say, this much, protein and this much, so that she measures, right? Now, measuring your food is important when you're looking for a healthy diet. But if you think about my mom never measured. And if I tell her, Mom, you got to measure because I have this program I'm following, she looks at me and she says, you're crazy. So why is it hard? When you have traditional legacy systems and you're used to and you're comfortable and you're good at it, I don't want to change. They always said, don't change anything that's not broken. So if I'm used to working on Excel, or I'm used to working in a system or manual system, it becomes very hard for the person to make that change or make that shift. It becomes the responsibility of the data leaders to create applications or create platforms or create marketplace, which is easy to use. I love the book One Click by, which is all about Amazon. When Amazon came with the one click to buy, their sales increased immediately. When you keep it simple, and we learn about that always, keep it simple. But if you keep it simple, your adoption will go higher. And we forget. And being an engineer, love complication, you love frameworks, you love, architectures, and you get so engaged in your own cycle that we forget about the user experience. And I think a lot of times, if you don't really invest in the user experience, a lot of time the adoption fails. So business usually will constantly blame technology because they'll say, oh, your technology doesn't work. It's not that their technology doesn't work. It's not simple enough, easy enough to use. And then you'll see technology saying, oh my God, I built this complicated, beautiful technology and you just don't know. You're just not in the favor of technology, so you always constantly blame technology. So there's a huge gap between business and technologists because of the way they operate.
You've mentioned culture and you've mentioned ease of use and technology and the responsibility of data leaders. Do you think that trust of the data is in any way a barrier for leaders in organizations actually making decisions and changing their approach, rather relying just on gut, but actually then looking at the data and making decisions based on the data?
Oh my God. I mean, I cannot tell you, I've worked in this field for 30 years and trust in data is a big issue everywhere I've gone. And when you talk about adoption and why business users are not happy about using a new technology or using, working with data, rather go with their old ways of gut, what the gut says, is because they can't trust the data. I mean, if you think about, even you go back into your company and you look at the sales data, is it updated? Is it real time? These numbers are from last month, but this is not what I did. How come that number never got caught in this, CRM? So the financial systems don't match with the sales numbers, the sales pipeline. So there's a lot of gaps in technology. So of course, so what do? Your instant reaction would be, as a business user, I don't trust the data. I'm not going to look at it. I'm not going to make a decision on the numbers you're giving me because I don't trust the number. And now, being a consultant, I always said, listen, you need to start somewhere. And I would sit with the business users and say, I agree, you can't trust the numbers today, but it gives you a direction. So start working with it. But a lot of times, business users don't like that answer. They would say, well, I know where I should go. Why should I even look at this number? So there is a gap, and there is a problem if you don't trust the numbers. The business user would never use the data if they don't trust the data.
And how have you seen organizations start to tackle that trust issue?
Listen, it's all about proving in small pieces, taking small bits and proving that the data is trustworthy. Taking small pieces and showing success. I always call focus on small wins to create big wins. So if you can create small wins to show that, so the business user can trust the data and can see the benefit of that data to create wins for themselves. There has to be an immediate implication for business user to take that data and make a change, a positive change for their organization. If they can't do that, they will never trust it.
But moving through with a crawl, walk, run approach makes complete sense. Allied to that is the need to ensure that the data that's being presented is trustworthy, that you're demonstrating it effectively every time, that with every incremental addition of data being provided is trustworthy. What are the elements that are required to ensure that the data is trustworthy?
You're using the right technology that can clean the data is important. You have the right platform of how you're showcasing is important. It's consistent. So you're showing some kind of consistency is really critical. You want to make sure that, as I said before, ease of use is really important. So there are multiple factors into making sure that the business user you're working with can trust your data.
I couldn't agree more. And you're teaching currently a masterclass at Columbia University. How are you helping future leaders start to think about being data driven?
I always talk about data at hand, right? What do you have at hand already that you can start working with? We talk about big data, and we talk about what kind of social data you can collect, or the data which is not in-house you can collect, and really start doing some analysis on your sentiment analysis or social analysis. But I always talk about the business leaders who are looking to build enterprises or looking to build products, and think about, if you want to create innovation, create any kind of new product launches, are you listening to your customer? What are your customers saying? The biggest point is that understanding your business strategy and trying to take your data strategy and aligning your business strategy to data strategy. So do you have a business strategy, and what are the elements of the business strategy that are critical to your success for this year or for next 5 years? Do you have the data available to make you successful or create differentiation? Do you have data available to create the competitive edge? So I always talk about the 9 elements in the business model, from your unique value proposition to your customers and who your customer segment is, to your, key resources and revenue and cost. Looking at your business model and saying, where can I create an impact based upon the business strategy, and how do I build a data strategy around it? So having a strong data strategy, which is aligned to your business strategy, and a lot of times people miss that. People say, oh yes, I'm working on a data strategy. It becomes a project for 6 months or 10 months, never gets finished, never gets distributed, never gets shared. You know, listen, it all starts with having the right people. If you have the right people who understand the value of the business, can create the right strategy for the data, can help you create the right framework and technology and platforms. So I think you need to, what I always talk about is making sure you start from the top and make sure you don't leave any pieces behind. When you build a strategy, you make sure it's communicated throughout the workforce and it's executed effectively.
And lots of data leaders or most data leaders are, if not all data leaders are, engineering. They're engineers. They grow up through an engineering, and they are focused on solving those complex problems. They're focused on the technology. They're focused on the tools. How do you help those folks to start to make the transition to really understand the business in order to set a cohesive and effective and impactful data strategy?
You're so right. A lot of people who are building data strategy, they are coming from technology field. And it could be a huge transition for them to really understand business. I always talk about, a couple of things which they have to keep in mind. First is really learning business. Which what does that mean? Sitting with your business users and really learning and seeing how the business gets impacted. I had a customer in healthcare, and what they did is they took their programmers and had them sit in the OR to make sure they can see what the wait times were. They could see the pain of the patient, so they understood why their analytics on the wait times were so important. So really thinking about, can you really live the life of a business leader or business user and understand what their pain points are is really critical. So touching and feeling is important for a technologist. The second thing is understanding and studying basic business concepts. How is a business built? And I always say the best place to go is build a business model canvas. Take the template and fill it in and see if you understand business. Do you understand all the elements of your business, whichever business you're working? It could be an internal business function you're working with or external. So really understand what your company is about. How is your company making money? Spend some time and understand and read your press releases. Look at the investor reports, what are published. Try to understand your business so that when you're working with a functional area, you can really make sense of it. So I always have, when I'm teaching at Columbia, or I'm teaching at, I teach at TDWI or Enterprise Data World, I always have my engineers start with a business model canvas. And I ask them to start filling, and I kind of teach them on how should they understand that. And that needs to be the foundation of building data strategy, or that's the foundation of building a product design, or that could be the foundation of really developing and understanding any application. So that, I would say, should be the place where you start as a leader or as an engineer, to understand what the business model looks like for your business you're working with. Once you understand that, then you start putting together a data workflow. Where is the data coming from, and according to that business? And then you take to the next level and say, what is available to me, and where can I create the quick wins? Where is the maximum value or maximum return I can get based upon what I understand on the business model canvas, your data workflows, and then you create the high value or high impact applications.
When you're working with these data leaders, what areas do you see them lack the most? Where do you see them need most support in order to make that transition to the point of being in a place where they understand the business and can create a comprehensive data strategy?
Where I see the engineers get mostly stuck at is within their head, because they're so smart and they're so comfortable in what they know, and they enjoy the technology so much that, I'll meet people, they'll say, oh, look, we created this environment and the environment is so great. Or look, I built this in Python, and it does all these functionality. And I will ask a basic question, and I'll say, how would this application change, or how would this dashboard change, or how would this metrics change if we change this number in the marketing spend? Or how would this product impact, can you show me? And I would see the blank faces, because they never thought about the impact of the numbers changing, or they truly didn't understand the business They were so engaged in this beautiful analytics they build or the beautiful framework they build because that's what they enjoy, right? That's what they spend all their time in. Working with the latest and greatest technology is what they enjoy the most, right? Thinking about how a business is going to get impacted is something they're not doing day to day. So it's not their fault. But if you truly want to build an application, you truly need to understand what the business needs are. Even though it's a basic statement, I see so many technologists miss that because they get so engaged and they enjoy so much about, oh, I'm working on the real time. Oh, I'm building this data lake. Oh, look, built this amazing framework in Google or Amazon, web services or whatever it may be, Snowflake, or so engaged in the technology, and they forget about technology is a tool to solve a business problem. But as an engineer, you love playing with the tools.
So you're almost engineering the tools to deliver some business. You're looking then for a business problem for the tool or application you've developed to solve rather than the other way around.
Exactly. And I think that's where engineers get stuck.
What sort of practical tips would you or advice would you give engineers to then for them to start to make that transition, to start to build that understanding of the business, so they're then fitting a business problem to the technology and not the other way around?
So I'm actually right in the middle of writing a book called The AI Factor, and I talk about how to apply big data and AI to create the business growth. And I talk about 3-step process. The very first step is to assess, understand your business strategy and assess where does your organization or the functional area you're working with, what quadrant they are in. So I define the 4 quadrant. Are they in conservation, internal, optimizing their cost? Are they in R&D, developing new products? Are they in increasing the market share? Or they are rule breakers and they're changing, the industry. So where do you stand in your organization or as a functional area, right? So first step is to assess the business strategy and understand the business strategy. Once you know what your business strategy is, then you use I call it a power canvas, which is the business canvas, but I call it a power canvas because the power canvas provides you the indicator of where you have the data or what kind of data you need to collect to create that change. And then the last step is about prioritization. Understanding what your priorities are so critical to make sure that, yes, you can go convince your senior management to buy the best tools you can or create the best environment or get the best resources. But if you don't understand, assess your business strategy, create a power canvas and create the priority, high value priority, you will not succeed. You may succeed in your own small little ways of creating the technology, but you won't succeed as a overall technology leader, if you don't understand the business. So I would say those 3 things are really important: assessing the business strategy, aligning your data strategy to that, building a power canvas, which will help you align your data strategy to your business strategy, and then prioritizing and saying, where is the value coming from? And then I talk about 715 elements, where you have 4 big pieces which you need to really focus on. The first is focusing really on getting your executive engagement, understanding the financial impact. Second piece is governance and security and quality. Third piece is education. Make sure that you're educating, and if you don't educate and you don't make it simple and people adoption is not there, it will fail. So the 4th piece is the adoption, and the last and 5th piece is about repeatability and scalability. Anything you build should be repeatable and scalable. So those are the big 4 buckets in the 715 framework.
That's fantastic advice for our listeners who would love to dive into those frameworks and get a deeper understanding. When is your book coming out?
So we are launching the book in September this year.
Fantastic. And remind me the name?
And the publisher is Post Hill Publishing, so you'll be seeing the book coming out from them.
Brilliant. And remind me the name of the book?
The AI Factor.
The AI Factor. Fantastic. So we're going to switch segments. The next segment is, we call it Under Pressure. And it's where we ask business leaders what has been your most difficult decision that you've made in your career. It could be in your current roles, but what for you has been the most difficult decision you've made in your career, and how did data shape that decision?
Transitions always has been the most difficult decision. When you're set in your ways and you're doing something a certain way, moving and changing becomes really difficult. So I would say product launches has always been challenging. We were a consulting firm. We grew it to about 350 people. And then we were doing so well in services, but then we pivoted to a product, healthcare product. And the biggest indicator for us then was the healthcare industry really needed, there was a whole ACO, the population health, the Obamacare when it came out. The healthcare was shifting. The way the payment in healthcare systems were happening were shifting. And what it meant was that hospitals were not getting paid for service. So if you went to get your knee surgery, instead of hospitals getting paid $10,000 for the knee surgery, I'm just, it's a rough number. I'm just giving an example. They wouldn't get 10,000 for the surgery. They'll get a population. So they want to keep the population healthy so that they will get a set amount of dollars from the government. And if the people don't come to the hospital, they get paid. They make more money. So the whole population health was really about keeping population healthy so that they're not coming to the hospital, and hospital still makes money. If the population came to the hospital, they'll lose money. When the shift came, the biggest value healthcare needed at that time was to really mine the data. So if they could mine the data, they'll be able to create that shift. So what we are being in the field of data, our management team really started looking at the trends and understanding what the world needed. And so we created that shift. And that was the hardest decision for me, because my gut was saying that I'm comfortable where I am. Why change? And when we started looking at the trends, we knew that we needed to launch new products. And as you know, when you're launching new products, you don't know if it's going to succeed or fail. And so it's a huge risk. How do you mitigate the risk? So the best way to mitigate the risk is to really look at the data and see what the data is telling you. So for us, it was really important that we actually analyze the data, even though the change is so uncomfortable. You become comfortable with the change when you look at the data. You become comfortable with the change when you analyze the data and the data is telling you the trend.
That's such a great story.
But it also mitigates, right? I always say that being an entrepreneur or being a business leader, you need to take risk.
Exactly. And the fact that you're ultimately, that the fear of the unknown even is what is holding most of us back when we look to transition. And you're using the data to rationalize and objectify that fear. We could talk, this has been absolutely fascinating. We could talk for many more hours, but we're gonna draw it to a close. So the last question to close it out would be your best piece of career advice that you've ever gotten.
Be curious and keep learning. I think being a lifelong learner, and be humble, because I think you'll have in my career I got success very quickly, but I think arrogance kills a curiosity and you stop learning. So I think it's so important to be humble, curious, and keep learning. And if you're a lifelong learner, and especially being in technology, you have to be a lifelong learner, but keep your mind open to change, open to learning, and open to growth. Because you can grow. I mean, there's no age for growth, right? No age for learning. So that was the best advice I got.
Brilliant. So for people that would love to follow you, keep in touch, maybe contact you, where's the best place to find you online?
So on LinkedIn, I'm Asha Saxena, And if you search me on Google, Asha Saxena 101, my Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter is all Asha Saxena 101. I also have a website called ashasaxena.com.
Brilliant. Asha, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been great having you. And for our listeners, really looking forward to the next episode. So thank you, Asha.
Thank you.
Truth Be Known is brought to you by Talend. A leader in data integration and data integrity, Talend enables every company to find clarity amidst the chaos. Talend Data Fabric brings together in a single platform all the necessary capabilities that ensure enterprise data is complete, clean, compliant, and readily available to everyone who needs it throughout the organization. Learn more at talend.com. That's TALEND.com.